Okay, good morning. I'm very happy to have my friends and colleague Mary Nemecek here talking to us about eBird today. I just want to tell folks that are in the audience, please feel free to either put your questions in the Whova Q&A, the Whova chat, or if you can access the Zoom chat, that's fine too. And we will get to questions at the end. Mary, take it away.
All right. Hey, Dana. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm Mary Nemecek. Many of you know me as the Conservation Chair of Burroughs Audubon Society of Greater Kansas City, but I also serve as a regional statewide reviewer for eBird and on the Missouri Rare Birds Records Committee. So I want to talk about and introduce you to, if you're not aware of eBird. eBird is a product by the University of Cornell, and you can access it either via a laptop or an app on your phone that allows you to participate in citizen science by recording bird observations. So it helps in many ways. It helps you find more birds because you can look at what other people have seen in your area. And then if those are your targets or those you're looking for a place to bird, it can help you find that. It helps you keep track of your bird lists, your photos, any sound recordings that you may make. It explores the latest sightings from around the world. You can join the world's largest birding community, and a lot of these observations are used in things like citizen science research, scientific papers. We use them for conservation areas and other important areas around the state when people are looking at development or changing or putting together a management plan. It's important to know what species are being seen there and how often, et cetera. So it's really a great tool. It gives a lot to the user, and then in turn, the user can give to citizen science. So as an eBird reviewer, sometimes I hear, oh my God, those eBird reviewers, what about that? We're going to go through the app and how to enter your sightings, but I want to talk to you about a few caveats of the system to start with. So data quality is of critical importance. So when you enter sightings, we have what we call filters set up that will let you know if you're entering something that seems to be out of date or rare for your area. It means we need more information. And then eBird reviewers will look at the data that's input and decide, do we need to ask more questions? How do we make sure that this record meets the criteria for public output? So if you participate in eBird, please use an email address that you look at so eBird reviewers can contact you if they have questions about your sightings. So I'm going to concentrate on the phone app because I think that's how most people do this in the field. So this is what it will look like, and we'll do a live phone app here in a few minutes. But when you start your phone app, you're going to have your date, your time, and then there is this button called record track. If you have that on, it will record the distance that you traveled, so you do not have to calculate that. We recommend that all eBird lists be 10 miles or less. If you're going to have to do more than 10 miles, it's best if you can break it up based on geography or something, because typically once you get beyond 10 miles, you've changed ecosystems, habitat, areas, that kind of thing. You're going to choose a location, and we'll talk about the importance of doing this when you first open your app. This is one of the caveats of eBird that I am not crazy about. The blue dots are personal locations, but they come up first. So if you go to Los Bluffs National Wildlife Refuge, there are several orange dots, which are the hot spots. So there's one for the entire area, there's one for Snow Goose Pool, one for Mallard Marsh, etc. But overall, the first one that comes up will say Los Bluffs National Wildlife Refuge and have a blue dot. And so there's all these tiny little individual locations when people should be using the hotspots. So I would encourage you to always use a hotspot unless you're birding a private area that's not open to most birders or your yard or something like that. But if you are at an area that birders frequent, use that orange hotspot for your location. You're going to enter observations, and it's really easy. You enter the number that you're seeing and what that species is. So if I'm seeing gadwall, I would enter 25, and as I start typing, it brings up the selected list of species. And so you just click on gadwall, and it will enter 25 gadwall. If you see another 25, you enter 25 gadwall, and it will tally for you. So you don't have to keep track of the total number of birds you're seeing. You can just report them as you see them, and eBird keeps track of the total number. It'll add it to it. You can also override that if, for some reason you entered something wrong, or you're just like, okay, there's 1,000 out there, and so I'm just going to say 1,000. You can override what they tally for you. One of the reasons you want to enter your location is it's going to help tell you what's expected at that area. So you'll see there's these little frequency dots on here. If they're half orange, it means that that species has been there, but it's not really frequent. If there's no dot, it's an expected species. And if there's a red dot, it's going to mean, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, if I can move this. Oops. But if there's a red dot, it's going to tell you that's something that's rare that's going to need some attention. When you see these little explanations, it's going to ask that you enter notes. And one of the things that we want to do when we enter notes is make them helpful. So a lot of times I'll get notes like flew in and landed on a tree. Well, that helps me eliminate some things like trumpeter swan, but it doesn't really tell me how you arrived at the number or the ID. So if it's a high count, we want to know how you counted it. So we want to know counted by ones, counted by fives, had 3 groups in 4 areas, something that tells us that there was some thought behind this count, because it's an unusual count, and we just need to make sure the integrity of the data for the output is there. The other thing is, well, so let me go back. So the other thing is if it's an early or late date or a not expected species. We set filters, and the thing about filters is they have to be 1 day on, 1 day off. It used to be we could only manage them by the month, which was horrible. Thankfully, we can manage them by the day now. But on this Texas list, tree swallows start on March 4th. If you see a tree swallow on March 3rd, it will flag it. As a reviewer, I'm going to look at that and say, no big deal, and accept it, and you'll never hear from me. But I just don't want people to get frustrated when you see something flagged, because we try to make these as perfect as possible, but because you have to pick a date, it doesn't allow you to say, well, it's probably here on March 1st, but definitely here on March 4th. It's a computer program, so there's an on and off. So entering those notes are helpful, and then we can easily evaluate if something's way out of range. You'll hear from us. If it's within range or just a little bit outside of it, you won't. And then the other thing is a species that's rare. So an unexpected species will have a red dot, but an actual rare species, meaning a species that we don't expect to see, has an R by it. And if it has an R by it, you will have to enter notes. And again, those notes are super helpful to tell us how you arrived at that ID. So a couple of good references, and maybe Dana can send these out afterwards, is Mark Robbins' Status and Distribution of Birds in Missouri. It's free online. You can also get a printed paperback version if you want for a fee. But we can put up the link to this later on, but you can just download it. I actually keep it on my phone, so if I'm in the field, I can look it up if I have any questions. And then this is kind of what it looks like. It'll tell you when it's supposed to be here. So dowitchers are kind of a thing now. We're leaving the long-billed dowitcher period, entering the short-billed dowitcher period. So it says the species is typically not seen until the 2nd week of March. By early April, it can be seen by the hundreds and thousands. So that's long-billed dowitchers. Then you kind of know by the beginning of the last week of May, they're virtually gone. So as the season moves on, short-billed dowitchers become more expected early in the season. Long-billed dowitchers are more expected. And then entering the notes. So photos or vocalizations are always fantastic because it allows us to look at it and say, yep, that's what it is, or that's what it sounds like, and move on. If not, then let us know how you came to that. One of the things, if something's been in an area for a long time, people will say continuing, which is great if there's other observations nearby your sighting. But if no one has seen the species within a week or so, it's really helpful if you go ahead and enter notes as if you just found it, because we don't know, is that bird still there? How come no one's seen it in a week and then someone's reported it? So the better those are, and like I said, photos are always preferred, and we can show how to upload those. Okay, I'm going to switch off of this, and I'm going to show you my phone. Hopefully this will work. Okay, you should be seeing my phone now. And I'm going to show you my eBird app. So I want to walk through entering an observation on your phone. And we're going to pretend we're at a hotspot to do this. So when you first open the app, this is what the app looks like. And you'll just click on that. It has your start time. You can change that. So if you've been there for 5 or 10 minutes and you're like, oh, I need to open my eBird app, you can add or subtract minutes from that. I have my record track on, so I don't have to calculate how far I've gone. And I'm going to start my checklist. So this is everything that is fairly normal, I would say, in the state of Missouri, even if it's outside of when you're currently seeing it. So let's pick something that's nearby, and I'm going to pick this Line Creek Trail that's near my house. And that helps. So some hotspots will have birds that are expected there. So if you're at Los Bluffs, there's a lot of birds that are expected, like sandhill cranes, whereas if you're at Cooley Lake or some other location, sandhill cranes would be marked as rare because they're not expected in that part of the state. So that's why it's really helpful to have the location on there. So what are we going to see? Let's say we have a couple of Carolina wrens singing. So you're going to enter 2 because we have a couple, and you're going to start typing. And as you type, you see Carolina wren comes up. And we select that. There's nothing else we have to do. That tells us that that we've selected 2 and we're good to go. Let's say we think we see 2 long-tailed ducks flying overhead. So we're going to enter long-tailed ducks. Well, that is automatically going to come up as rare. So that means that species is not expected. So make sure that you're sure about what you saw. And then it will not let you leave this checklist until you enter notes. So to enter notes, you just hit, get back here. You just hit the species, it'll pop up. You type in your details here, clearly seen in lake, mostly white duck with, white duck with dark facial markings, etc. So whatever you want to say that determine that. And then once you do that, you would hit done. So we go through, we see the rest of the species, and then we're going to hit stop once we've finished tracking it. And when you stop, it tells you how many observers. So right now it's just me. If I had a friend with me, I can add that. How long I've done it, how many miles I've gone. So if I was moving around, this would be calculated. Is this a complete checklist of the birds you were able to identify? If it is, yes. If it's something where you're driving down the road, you have different options you can pick here. So you can pick incidental, which is I was doing dishes and I looked outside and I had a spotted towhee in my yard. Or you can do traveling, where if you were walking a trail or driving around, you would hit traveling. Or stationary. If I'm sitting on my back porch but I'm birding, it would be stationary. So then we're going to add checklist comments that we have. And so I always like to kind of add the weather conditions, but you can also add, like, if something really cool happens, like a front came through and there was a big fallout, or 2 days after Hurricane Laura, we had a lot of rarities show up in Missouri after Hurricane Laura went through. So you can add in your checklist comments, and then you will, and I'm going to remove this long-tailed duck because I don't want to send out any alerts. And I'm just going to hit continue. So I've only seen a Carolina wren, so I'm going to hit submit, and it will say that that list went in. Now, let's say I want to add a picture to it. I have a button down here that says checklists, and I'm going to hit that, and it's going to show me my not submitted and my submitted checklist. Well, I just submitted a checklist, so I'm going to hit that one. And let's say I wanted to add a photo to this. And this is for photos that are on your phone. If they're photos on your computer that you go home and download, you do this the same way on your computer. But let's say I took a photo through my scope of the Carolina wren. So I bring up the submitted, I have it here. So I'm going to open up my checklist on eBird online. And when I do that, there's a little drop down button here where you can edit different things. And if you want to add a photo or a voice recording, you're going to click add media. And it's going to bring up all of your species. In this case, we only have one on the checklist. And then you just open your photo library, and forgive this, the photos of my son, but here, let's use these. These are Caspian and Forrester's Terns. Let's say that's what I saw. You would pick that photo and hit add. And then as the photo is uploading, you see this green circle. I am famous for hitting add and then hitting done, because I see the photo show up and I think, oh, that's great. If you don't wait until that green circle gets done, it won't save your photo. So once you upload your photo, it'll say saved, and then you click done, and you are complete with your checklist, and the photos are embedded. So I went about a minute over, but I thought I would see if anybody had any questions, or if that was helpful, or what you guys thought about using eBird.
Yep, Mary, you absolutely have time for questions. There's really no cutoff. So folks, feel free to, as I said at the very beginning, put questions in the Q&A or chat on Whova, or the chat on Zoom is fine as well. I think you just covered all of it.
I did. I probably talked way too fast, so I apologize. I kept trying to tell myself to slow down, so my apologies.
No, I would say honestly, as someone that's not very familiar with eBird, I've done it, but that was really helpful, especially some of the things like make sure the green circle has quit going around and it says saved before hitting done.
Yes, and I do that almost every time. I will not be patient enough to wait, and then I have to do it again, and I get mad at myself. So yeah. So
let's see, I'm going to check. Give me 1 second, Mary. I have to check several different devices here.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll talk a little bit about, we're having storms here on the eastern side of the state tonight. So tomorrow morning, once the rain stops, should be really good for birding. Storms tend to force birds down, and then as soon as the rain stops, they start foraging, and they are pretty prevalent. So I know it's Mother's Day, but if anybody has a chance to get out, I think it should be pretty good. So.
And we are at peak migration as well.
Yes, we are at peak migration. Mm-hmm. Lots of good warblers and neotropic migrants coming through.
Mary, you have just a comment here from Marcia that now she'll be entering weather. So that was a good.
That's great.
Good tip. Mm-hmm. Questions, and this is recorded, so folks can feel free to just review it later and follow along on your own app when it's on a recording. So thank you very much, my friend.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. And if anybody ever has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to the eBird reviewers. There's several of us in the state. Some have regions, some have the entire state, but we're always glad to answer questions. So.
Perfect. And I'm going to post a couple of the links that you mentioned as well, and people should be good to go.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.